Hey guys, what's up? Gamer Dude back once again to talk about The Fall of an Icon. It's a game series that I've enjoyed since childhood, and it is the Burnout franchise by Criterion Games, and just Criterion Games in general. So, all of this started way back in 2007 when Burnout Revenge was released. After the release of this game, the co-founders of Criterion Games and the creators of the Burnout franchise resigned from the studio. After they left, the following statement was released by EAGAMES, the company that then purchased Criterion Games, but I'll get into that a bit later. And if I'm being honest, this is where it all started to go wrong. So what they said was, the incredibly creative and talented team at Criterion are hard at work on a new project for next-gen consoles. Unbeknown to us, it was Burnout Paradise, which we wouldn't find out because the PS3 wasn't due for release for another year. They went on to say, as new IP continues to be a major priority across EA Games, Matt Webster was the leading development of a new game, and the Criterion studio was set to be moving forward. Matt had been part of Criterion Games for years, that's why they kept him on, and had an exciting vision for a new game in the franchise, which once again, unbeknown to us, was Burnout Paradise. So to understand why all of this actually happened, we have to go back to the beginning and go into more detail about Criterion Games and where it all began. So Criterion Software, Criterion Games, but it was called Criterion Software back then, began in the late 90s, with a few small titles when PC gaming was still in its infancy. Criterion Games then quickly made a name for itself in 2001, with the first Burnout game in the series, with its over-the-top and explosive racing action. A few games in later years followed, but in 2004 Electronic Arts, EA Games, acquired the Guildford studio in the UK, which went on to develop 5 more Burnout games. That was Burnout Revenge, Burnout 3 Takedown, Burnout Crash, things like that. I can't remember all the Burnout game names. But this, in my opinion, was their first mistake. Because EA Games wanted to make it somewhat more like Need for Speed. And as the years progressed with the extra games in the franchise, this is exactly what happened. In 2012, the studio was switched over to handle the Need for Speed franchise. As I just said, they wanted to make it more Need for Speed-like. But that lasted less than a year. In 2013, much of the staff and Need for Speed development teams left for the newly formed studio Ghost Games, which we don't really hear much from anymore anyway. Criterion Games was left with a small staff and a new focus on an unnamed game, which again was Burnout Paradise, unbeknown to us at the time. In the years since, the studio created and nurtured the over-the-top Burnout racing games, following 2010's release of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit and 2011's Burnout Crash, one of the last Burnout games in the series. I mean, I would say Burnout Paradise was the last game in the series, like the real last game in the series, but since it's been remastered back on the PlayStation 4, who knows? Criterion was then given stewardship over the Need for Speed franchise, which brought us Need for Speed Most Wanted. One of the only Need for Speed games I actually liked, I mean there's 2 in particular I liked Hot Pursuit and I liked Most Wanted. They are probably the only 2 Need for Speed games I actually enjoyed, I actually liked. But even Hot Pursuit, it seemed kind of Burnout-like, because you could take down police cars, you could take down your enemies. Whereas, well, enemies, I mean competitors. Whereas before, in the Need for Speed games, because I remember playing 1 or 2 of them on the PS2, remember before it was all just about racing through checkpoints and getting to the finish line first. And then they really broke the fourth wall with future Need for Speed games by making them too much like Burnout, as I said, with the takedowns, and Hot Pursuit adding the police vehicles where you could take down assailants, and you could take down your own assailants when you weren't playing as a police officer. It was a bit Burnout like, but they won't admit that. EA Games was basically the dominant gaming company back in the day, and anything that they really wanted was theirs for the taking. And in my opinion, it's this change, this direction that they went that killed the franchise. I mean, doing takedown events like this in Burnout Paradise is so much different to the original Burnout games. I mean, the original Burnout games, you had different options, like you could change your map, you could go to different areas on the map. Even the crash events like this, the crash events were so much better, but I'll get into detail on that a bit later as well. So yes, we got a remaster of Burnout Paradise, which, as I said, to date has been EA Games and Criterion's last Burnout game in the franchise. Because it's a remaster, let's just call it a new game. So it's their last in the franchise, really. But is a remaster of a 10-year-old game really what we all wanted? As fun as Burnout Paradise can be, I mean, it gets rather repetitive when you're doing things like the Showtime event on screen, when you're doing the takedown events, when you're doing the races. They all seem quite repetitive and quite the same. The map as well, the map is so small. I mean, yes, I get it was for a last generation console originally, but there were so many open world games back then that had a bigger map than this. I mean, take the first Red Dead Redemption game, for example. The map was huge on that. So it would have been cool if they added a bigger world, like Burnout 3 did. Burnout 3 Takedown, you had all those different events across the world. It was worldwide events, and that was really cool. That really made me keep coming back to the game. Whereas with this, I find myself playing it for maybe an hour or two per day, getting a trophy or two, and then just coming off because I get bored. I mean, yeah, it's fun to cruise around for a little bit, but the slightest tap to your car and you crash out. You know, it's not GTA, it's not Need for Speed. Like, if you crash your car in GTA, you know, you're just going to carry on. If you crash your car in Need for Speed, you might take yourself out, but other than that, you might carry on. There are some little bits in this game which redeem it, like if you go over a jump and hit it at the wrong angle, for example, you will sometimes be able to drive away. But still, it's lacking that finesse, let's say, that the original Burnout games actually had. Like, yeah, doing this right now, this is quite fun, you know, just ramming your car around and crashing into random shit and getting points. But there's no fun to it, because the only multipliers you get are by hitting buses. And, you know, where's the original ×2? Where's the ×4? Where's the Heartbreaker? You know, the Heartbreaker that we all tried to avoid in the original Burnout series when doing these events, which would just cut your score in half and you'd be like, fuck, I've got to do this again. That was what made it fun back in the day. Anyway, my point is, does this tell us that we could possibly see more of the classic Burnout games return in full 4K HD? I mean, little is known, because the company haven't really released any information regarding the Burnout franchise, because the focus for EA in recent years has been FIFA and Need for Speed. That's, as you know, last year, or was it? No, it was 2017. Yeah, 2017 we got Need for Speed Payback, and then 2018 they came out with this remaster. And then, you know, they released FIFA and FIFA again and FIFA again, and, you know, even the FIFA games are really repetitive. I do not like the FIFA games. Probably going to get some hate for that, but it's just my opinion as a gamer. So, although Burnout Paradise Remastered was a big shock and a surprise to see EA remaster a game in 2018 that was already 10 years old, it's a big, bold move for them to do such a thing. I mean, was it to commemorate an anniversary of the game? But, you know, they could have done something better. They could have remastered the first Burnout game, because the first Burnout game's almost 20 years old now. That came out in 2001, so that is almost 20 years old. God damn, I feel old saying that. But even the car selection in this game was a bit too off. Like, the stats for them were practically the same. If you did an event to get one of the extra cars, because you got one of the cars, then you had to do another event to get an improved version of said car. But that was, the cars that it would give you would be practically the same. They'd just have a different paint job on them or something. You know, they'd have the same strength, the same boost, and the same speed. So it's like, well, you said this car was better, but it's exactly the same. It's something that was put into the game that I think they could have expanded on a lot more. They could have done a lot more to it. Like, talking about that, as I just said, the reliable custom just there, and then the reliable special. It's practically the same stats. There's just one bar on the extra stat. So it's not something that you'd think they would remaster, considering Burnout Paradise wasn't exactly big in sales figures when it first came out in 2008. But anyway, this brings me back to my earlier argument. Will we see more games in the Burnout series make a return? Or possibly a new Burnout game, or Burnout-like game, should I say, to appear in the future? Because if you take a look back at Need for Speed Payback, that in itself is a Burnout game. It says Need for Speed in the title, but everything you do in that game points to Burnout, or at least ties in with Burnout Paradise, the way they went with Burnout Paradise with the open world racing and whatnot. But in Need for Speed Payback, you can take out the racers, you can get different cars, you can buy the cars. I mean, yes, in Burnout you can't buy the cars, but still, my point stands. Need for Speed Payback was basically an entry into the Burnout series. It felt more like a Burnout game than a Need for Speed game, is what I'm trying to say. So, a statement was issued in 2012 by some of the employees who went off to work on the Need for Speed franchise at the newly created Ghost Games, which again we haven't really heard much from in the last couple of years. And they came out with, "You haven't seen the last of the Burnout series." So, were they talking about future games, or the fact that for all those long-awaited years they were only working on a remaster of this game, which would be kind of a kick in the testicles, really, and a bit of a ball ache. Pun. But yeah, I'm not too sure where to go with that, because there's a lot of things that EA Games have screwed up in the past, like EA Games, for example, saying that singular-based story games are dead. Yes, Burnout Paradise had online access, but its story content was so much better. I mean, the online content as well was practically a story in itself. So they're being a bit hypocritical there at EA Games, saying that, oh, singular-based story games are dead, because look at God of War. Look at Uncharted. Yes, Uncharted got online, but it wasn't very good. Look at Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption 2, sorry. More people are playing the story mode than online for Red Dead Redemption 2. Yes, Red Dead 2 is only in the beta phase, but the amount of players going into that has declined. More players play the story mode. I play the story mode. I've completed it, and I still play the story mode. So, I'm not really sure why EA Games would just make hypocrites of themselves, really, because they've made games in the past on last generation console, on the PS3, that didn't have any online capabilities. And now the PS4 and the Xbox One and the talk of a PS5 and a new Xbox has come around, they're all like, oh no, singular-based story games are dead, everybody wants to play online. Well, it's not the case. Players want a story game. Players want something they can enjoy themselves. They want an open world story, not an open world online where you can be killed every 5 fucking seconds, or if it's a Burnout game, for example, taken out every 5 seconds. But yeah, I think I've covered all I can for this video, so I want to thank everyone right now. Do appreciate y'all for stopping by. Shout out to all subscribers, old and new. Still trying to reach that goal of 800 for my birthday. We are now only 19 away, so I'm really kind of hoping that'll get up there before Friday. If y'all are interested as well, on the 21st, Monday, I will be returning to my Telltale Games series. We'll be coming back with Guardians of the Galaxy. If those interest you, they are all in a playlist for your convenience. So the schedule for that is Guardians of the Galaxy Monday, Tales from the Borderlands Tuesday, Game of Thrones Thursday, Batman Friday, and The Walking Dead on Sunday. Keeping it canon to the TV series, of course. So yeah, that being said, once again, thank you all so much. I do appreciate the love and support. This has been Gamer Dude. Happy gaming, and I will catch you all real soon.